Good afternoon, Ma'am Anggani, as my lovely lecturer, and all friends from Khusus 1 and 2. Today, our group consists of Gabby and Dian will present theory assessment of psychomotor domain. The first role will be delivered by me, Gabby. Now let's take a look at the definition of this domain. One of the education purpose is concerning what students know and do after teaching and learning process. The realization of educational goals and objectives in the educational process is based on the accuracy of the judgment and inferences made by decision of the test, measurement, and evaluation to achieve the goals. There are several assessment domains in school. After we knew cognitive, affective, and now our group will explain psychomotor domain, which relates to the student's practical skill, action, behavior as the output of teaching and learning process. And then, what is psychomotor domain? The psychomotor domain is skill-based. It is steeped in a demonstration and 3 practical instructional levels. They are imitation, practice, and habit. According to Hawke, 2017, states that psychomotor domain is proposed to specify physical function, reflex behavior, and interpretive movements, encoding information through physical action to express or interpret information which has been perceived. In Indonesian educational system, we call it as ranah penilaian keterampilan siswa. So, from this explanation, we can conclude that cognitive is about thinking domain, affective is about feeling, and psychomotor is about doing, acting, or behaving. And what is it used for? First, the ability to perform kinesthetic activity in an easy, precise, harmonious way with the constant changing circumstances. And it is related to mental abilities, adaptive abilities, general skill, and motor skills. And next is about level of psychomotor domain. Dean Hauenstein in 1998 divided it into 5 phases. They are observing, imitating, manipulating, performing, and perfecting. Now let's take a look at the explanation. Observing. The fact of receiving and recognizing certain particular stimuli or phenomena. For example, students are listening to the teacher explanation before having a task. So, students, someone, or people only trying to recognize the information they can be understand and doesn't understand here. And imitating, the act of interpreting, translating, and responding to repeat or stimulate an act. For example, first, children are imitating their parents' daily behavior. And second, students imitate their English teacher's pronunciation through dialogues or conversation. So, we imitate repeatedly any information or new behavior as a response. Manipulating. The act of valuing and applying knowledge to perform an action in a situation or similar to that which it was imitated. For example, Yumi teaches Black Swan dance to her little sister, Rami. Now she performs the dance beautifully as her sister taught. So, manipulating means that we imitate what has been taught or delivered into real application. Even imitating process, we only repeat in teaching and learning process at that time. But in manipulating process, we apply it directly. And performing. The act of analyzing, synthesizing, and organizing action to act rationally and functionally. For example, playing football with the team. They learn how to analyze, synthesize, and organizing strategies to score a goal. In this level, we perform the real activity, and it might be imitating previous information or phenomena or we organize it rationally and functionally. Here, our rational mind will be involved, not only repeat the same information. And then, perfecting. The act evaluating and behaving with high degree of sensory and motor skills, sensitivity, expertise, and artistry. For example, Noah is a rock star. He sings naturally and doing improvisation to make his song better at stage. This is the last level of psychomotor, and here we can act perfectly, naturally, freely, and professionally. We are not only imitating and following the previous information, but we can decide, organize, evaluating, and choosing ourselves. Next slide is about how we as teachers doing the assessment of psychomotor domain. Indonesia has its own educational system to be followed, but we can see the complete procedures first before knowing the instrument of psychomotor assessment. This is alur prosedur kerja penyusunan perangkat penilaian psikomotor. And now, you can see the picture on the slide. There are several input that are used to making psychomotor assessment. PP 19 tahun 2005, Permendiknas 23 tahun 2006, Permendiknas 20 tahun 2007, SK Dirjen nomor 12 tahun 2008, dan Pedoman Pengembangan Perangkat Penilaian Psikomotor. Here, the headmaster of the school have two main jobs. They are menugaskan TPK dan guru menyusun perangkat penilaian psikomotorik, kemudian memberikan arahan kepada TPK dan guru tentang perangkat penilaian psikomotor. And the job for TPK sekolah menyusun rencana kegiatan untuk penyusunan perangkat penilaian psikomotor, kemudian menyusun rambu-rambu mekanisme perangkat penilaian psikomotor. This is continued to the teacher of the classroom, and every teacher has their own job to arrange the assessment of psikomotor berupa penilaian psikomotor. Kemudian melakukan review dan revisi perangkat penilaian psikomotor yang diuji tingkat kelayakannya sebelum ditandatangani oleh kepala sekolah. Now, we go to the instruksi kerja proses penyusunan instrumen penilaian psikomotor, which is usually used by Indonesian teacher. You may see the picture on the slide. There are several instruksi or instruction to make the assessment of psikomotor. First, menyiapkan data untuk menyusun instrumen penilaian psikomotor dengan melihat standar kompetensi atau kompetensi dasar, kemudian melakukan analisis SK dan KD, menyusun kisi-kisi soal, menyusun pedoman penskoran berupa lembar daftar periksa observasi dan skala penilaian, kemudian diuji tingkat kelayakannya. Jika layak, instrumen psikomotor telah tersedia dan siap digunakan. Then, to create the assessment of psychomotor domain, there are theory or taxonomies used as guidance. It is interesting to note that while the cognitive taxonomy was described in 1956 and the affective in 1964, and the psychomotor domain were not fully described until the 1970s. So, there are several development and changes toward this domain. I will inform you guys about 3 taxonomies of psychomotor, which the most popular until today. First taxonomy from Simpson in 1972, and then Moore in 1998, and Herlow in 1972. Now, take a look at the Simpson theory. This area also refers to natural, autonomic responses or reflexes. The psychomotor domain is comprised of utilizing motor skill and coordinating them. The 7 categories under this. First, perception. Perception or awareness is the ability to use sensory cues to guide motor activity. This range from sensory stimulation through cue selection to translation. The important keywords are chooses, describes, detects, differentiates, distinguishes, identifies, isolates, and selects. The example is, children choose the suitable playing blocks or Lego shape to build a new form. And the next example is, soccer players estimate where the ball will land after it is thrown and when moving to the correct location to catch the ball. Second, set. Readiness to act. It includes mental, physical, and emotional sets. These three sets are dispositions that predetermine a person's response to different situations, or sometimes called mindset. The keywords are begins, displays, explains, proceeds, moves, states, reacts, and shows. For the example, Pablo often gets bad score in math, so he shows desire to study harder than before. And then, guided responses. The early stages in learning a complex skills that includes imitation and trial and error. Adequacy of performance is achieved by practicing. The keywords are copies, traces, follows, reacts, reproduce, and responds. For example, follows instruction to build a model. Next is mechanism. This is intermediate stage in learning a complex skill. Learned responses have been habitual and a movement can be performed with some confidence and proficiency. The keywords resembles, calibrates, greens, hits, manipulates, measures, organize, and sketches. The examples are, first, learn and then use vintage camera to take a photograph. Second, using a wooden cutting machine to make a furniture. And then, complex overt response. The skillful performance of motor acts that involve complex movement patterns. Proficiency is indicated by a quick, accurate, and highly coordinated performance, requiring a minimum of energy. This category includes performing without hesitation. And automatic performance. The keywords are assembles, builds, constructs, fixes, displays, greens, mixes, and organize. For example, a professional driver maneuvers a car into a tight parallel parking spot. And then, adaptation. Skills are well developed and the individual can modify movement patterns to fit special requirements. And the keywords are adapts, alters, changes, rearrange, reorganize, revise, and varies. And for the examples are, first, modifies instruction to meet the needs of the learners. And second, perform a biology task with a laboratory equipment that it was not originally intended to do. So this is only for demonstration. And the last is origination. This is creating new movement patterns to fit a particular situation or specific problem. Learning outcomes emphasize creativity based upon highly developed skill. The keywords are arrange, builds, combines, originates, creates, makes, constructs, and composes. For example, creates a new style of a modern dance. Now, my explanation part is over here. There are still 2 taxonomies from Moore and Harlow, which will be continued by Mbak Dian. Now Mbak Dian, the time is yours please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, the Honorable Ibu Anggani and all beloved my friends here. And thank you, Gabby, for the time that you have given to me. Now I'm going to continue the topic about the assessment of psychomotor domains, example, and rubric. Okay, based on Moore's taxonomy of the psychomotor, Moore's divided into 3 levels of learning in the psychomotor domain. The first one is imitation. Here means that the instructor shares the knowledge content and demonstrate the skill, and then the student can carry out the basic principle of the skill with instructional support from the teacher, and performance that perhaps of low quality. And the next one is manipulation. Here a student is able to perform the skill independently without the aid of the instructor, and actions are performed with the aid of written and verbal instruction, not visual demonstration. And the last one is precision. Here the student can perform skill accurately, efficiently, and effortlessly. And automaticity, the ability to perform a skill with unconscious effort. Next is from Harlow taxonomy. Here, in line with Bloom and Carlo, Anita Harlow, 1972, did for learning objective in the psychomotor domains. And Anita Harlow divided into 6 parts of the movement. The first one is reflex movement. Here, learning is response to some stimuli. For example, extension, postural adjustment, flexion, and etc. Then, basic fundamental movement. For basic fundamental movement, here inherent movement patterns which are formed by combining of reflex, such as coordinated movement, like catching, jumping, jumping rope, and so on. And for perceptual abilities here is refers to the interpretation of various stimuli that enable one to make adjustment to the environment. For example, like coordinated movement, such as catching and jumping rope, and etc. And for physical activities, it is required endurance, strength, vigor, and agility, which produce a sound and efficiently functioning body. For example, like all activities require, such as like strenuous effort for long period of time, on muscular exertion, or quick wide range of motion at the hip joint, quick and precise movement. And next is skill movement. For skill movement here, the result of the acquisition of a degree of efficiency when performing a task, such as all skill activities of use in sport, recreation, and dance. And the last is non-discursive communication. It is communication that through bodily movement ranging from posture to gestures. And creative movement, spatial expression, acts a part in a play through sophisticated choreography. For example, gesture, facial expression, body posture, and efficiently executed in skilled dance movement and choreography. And how to assess psychomotor domain? So the observation technique here, there are tools in observation technique. Many people use the term tools and technique even though the observation are not synonymous. Generally, observation implies certain uses such as checklists, rating scale, and etc. Observation technique is a process of observing and recording individual behavior. Now, this is the types of observation tools. There are checklists, rating scale, anecdotal records, critical incident technique. For the first type is checklist. Basically, checklist is a method of recording whether a characteristic is present or absent, or whether an action was or was not taken place, and it provides a simple yes or no judgment. For the construction of checklists, here while constructing or preparing checklists, following point to be still keep in mind, and then express each item in clear and simple language, and then avoid negative statements wherever possible, and then make sure that each item is clearly yes or no, true or false, etc. Then the last is review the items independently. For checklist, for evaluating of student performance during surgical dressing, this is the example. In the column of behavior, there are some lists that for the teacher can be analyzed to the student by giving mark into the column yes or no based on the student progress. Then the second type is rating scale. Rating scale is a standardized method of recording interpretation of behavior. With this technique, students or individuals rated on a scale from low to high with respect to a particular trait. This is type of rating scale. There are numerical rating scale, graphic rating scale, descriptive rating scale, and ranking method. For the one numerical rating scale, here where the rater checks or circle a number to indicate the degree to which a characteristic is present, such as indicate the degree to which pupil contribute to class discussion. The number represents the following values from 5 into 1, from outstanding into 4. Then, so to what extent does the pupil participate in class discussion? So the teacher can give the circle number from low into high, from 1, from 4, below average, above average, and outstanding. Then descriptive graphic scales. For example, place an X anywhere along the horizontal line and add a comment to clarify your rating, whether the student never participates or participate as or participate more than any other group member, and then give a comment about the student. Then for graphic rating scale, this is an example. The direction place an X anywhere along the horizontal line, and to what extent does the pupil participate in class discussion? From never, seldom, occasionally, frequently, and always. Ranking methods. In this approach, the pupils being rated are ranked in the order in which the data estimate those possess the characteristic being judged. There are modifications of ranking methods which are time-consuming procedures. The advantage of ranking method is that it requires the rater to differentiate among pupils being rated and place them in relative order from high to low. This is the principle of effective rating. Only those learning outcomes which can be evaluated and stated clearly should be checked by a rating scale. Then the characteristic evaluated should be directly observable and then a point on the scale should be clearly defined, and then they feel unqualified to judge for the writer, and rating from several observers should be combined wherever possible. Then here is the qualities of rating scale based on Gilbert identify about the qualities rating scale: clarity, reliance, precision, variety, objectivity, and uniqueness. And for common errors in rating, there are some factors. The first one is personal bias, generosity errors, central tendency errors, logical error, and halo effect. Then the third type is anecdotal records. Anecdotal records are factual description of the meaningful incident and events that the teacher has observed in the pupil lives. Each incident should be written down shortly after it happens, and the description may be recorded on a separate card or as running account, one for each pupil on separate page in a notebook. Here is the example of format of anecdotal records, as you can see. Then the last type is critical incident technique. In critical incident technique is a method of assessing the student's analytic and problem-solving competencies. In the student performance can be recorded and performance evaluated according to the state criteria. Use of the critical incident technique as a data gathering mechanism could be similar to that of the anecdotal record. Spatial behavioral objective would be incident. For example of the critical incident, as you can see from the PowerPoint, their behavioral objective, then the evaluation there. Then here is the example of psychomotor assessment instrument in English subject. For example, there must in speaking exam there must be two examiners and a pair of students. And then the problem is about the transactional for about 3 minutes, and they give the question from the examiner, and then the student they have to plan to make a conversation that given by the examiner. Then the transactional interpersonal, it can be, for example, like the student given situation by the examiner, and they are asked to have conversation such as like, dislike, and etc. Therefore, monologue, for example, like the student give picture and photograph, and then the student ask the student to describe the picture. Then the student can also make some speech, storytelling, and debate, and etc. And for rated aspect here, they are consist of 4: grammar, vocabulary, discourse management, pronunciation, interactive communication. So this is competency standard of graduates speaking. Students are able to express meaning in discourse transactional. For material scope is responding to an expressing a various inner speech act. And for the indicator is given a situation, student can carry out the transaction and etc. Then for the problem example, this is the example, the student showing attention, request, giving instruction, and etc. This is the possible answer for a transactional from by the student. Then this is the scoring guidelines. As I said before, there are 4 to give the student score from grammar and vocabulary, discourse management, speech and intonation, and interactive communication. So, we have discussed about meaning of measurement of psychomotor domains, level of psychomotor domain, taxonomy, psychomotor domain, tools of assessing psychomotor domain like observational checklist, rating scale, anecdotal records, cumulative records, and critical incident technique. And this is the last our presentation. That we can conclude that measurement of psychomotor domain is the important aspect in evaluating students. The tools which we have seen here are very useful for each teacher. And thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.